Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to do a video about the Path of Exile 1 announcement. Now, I know a lot of you guys have actually started on the Path of Exile train because of Path of Exile 2. A lot of you guys are actually waiting for that moment where it's like a full game reset, as if, and you guys can, start to take on this game in its second franchise that was so highly talked about in the past, though in the past maybe it just seemed a bit too intimidating for whatever reason. Now, Path of Exile guys, they gave us an announcement that was probably one of the most disappointing. Actually, it was definitely the most disappointing one that we have heard, and it has to do with the fact that they have delayed Path of Exile 1 leagues. So I thought I would kind of backtrack a little bit, give you guys some information on how the leagues work and why the game has been successful to this date, because I have been playing Path of Exile 1. I've only skipped a couple of leagues, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, just the timing was really bad. But more or less, I have been playing every single league for over 10 years since the game was first playable in, I think it was closed beta at the time when you had to get like the Kiwi supporter packs. So back then, Path of Exile was a game that was developed by very few people, and a lot of those very few people still work on Path of Exile 2 today, which is why I have been so hopeful for the game. And they made the system fairly shortly after launch, where they get a new league, a season reset, a new major mechanic, along with significant balance changes every 3 to 4 months to encourage you guys to try to make like a new character, explore the new content. And it was a mix where you would kind of take the knowledge that was still somewhat valuable from the previous time you played Path of Exile, adapt it to the new version of the game, and you could make pretty good character each time, but because there were new challenges, there was like an X factor. So there was this period of discovery where you try to figure out your build, try to figure out your character, and try to figure out the new content that they challenged you with. And this was a pretty fun experience, which resulted in Path of Exile more or less on an upward growth trend consistently over a decade, which is why the game is so good, honestly, and has been received so well, especially in recent years. It's largely why a lot of people were excited about Path of Exile 2. So the announcement that we got yesterday was that Path of Exile 1, its league, will be further delayed, and further delayed by a lot. Basically, instead of it being rolled out every 3 to 4 months, it has been like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months or something since the last one, because they've actually had to cannibalize their Path of Exile 1 team in order to get Path of Exile 2 out the door. And as a result of that, well, they're now working on Path of Exile 2, and Path of Exile 2, understandably, they didn't say it, but understandably is a much bigger project with many more prospective players. So they are going to maintain the resources that they took from Path of Exile 1, and they're going to keep them on Path of Exile 2, in their own words, at least until the second major rollout of Path of Exile 2 happens. And we don't have a date for this, but people assume that it is maybe a few months from now. And then afterwards, they promise that they will put their resources in working out a Path of Exile 1 league. That's pretty much the announcement. That's basically why a lot of people are disappointed. And I will give you guys a little bit of context, because again, I know a lot of you guys only played Path of Exile 2, so like, what's all the fuss about, right? Well, as the creators of Path of Exile 1, even Chris Wilson, in a talk that he actually, was very kind enough to give me some credit that, I contributed to this, their model of a new league with new content every 3 to 4 months basically keeps people coming back to the game, and it has been their recipe for success, which is why they have been doing it so well and perfecting it over the years. So they are kind of breaking this model. And as someone that plays video games a lot, it is something that has been missed a little bit. And it's really difficult to say with certainty, if you stop this cycle, when you pick it up again, how well it will work. So, the reality is, the disappointing announcement that they have, that's currently the best case scenario for Path of Exile 1. It's not what's surely going to happen, because let's be honest, their plans have changed many times in the last few months, and we are where we are today because of those changes. So it's not like, oh yeah, finally Path of Exile 1 is getting its league probably like 3-4 months from now, right? Yeah, maybe, but that's the best case. Okay, so in the best case, we're looking at approximately a year in between Path of Exile 1 leagues, which, yeah, that could and almost certainly does affect their player base. Because again, they're kind of breaking that repetition cycle that has been working for them for so long. The other side is, while Path of Exile 2 is out, it is a bit of a different game, but I have a lot of contacts and a lot of people that played Path of Exile 1 religiously are actually more into Path of Exile 2. And because the audience for content creators shifts towards Path of Exile 2, I would say that Path of Exile 2 will have a pretty strong future because, well, people are watching it. The content creators are going to play Path of Exile 2 more than going to play Path of Exile 1, at least most of them, because there's more eyes on the game. So not only is the cycle broken, but I think we'll have the content creators largely playing Path of Exile 2 over Path of Exile 1. Now, it's kind of a weird thing because even a player like Ben, who has probably gotten the most first places in races and leagues and challenges, he's actually back to playing Path of Exile 1 already. He basically said Path of Exile 1 is just so good. All the problems in Path of Exile 2 have been already solved in Path of Exile 1. And yeah, that's true. That's true. People that have played Path of Exile 1 and were like really, really into the game, like the most die-hard Path of Exile 1 players, when it comes to Path of Exile 2, a lot of them aren't too pleased. So there is going to be this divide. But I think it is undeniable that the audience is going to swing for Path of Exile 2, meaning that not only are content creators going to be pushing Path of Exile 2 more, but that's where the money is going to flow for the grinding gear games and their games. So I think what's going to happen is, although I'm sure it's not like intentional on their end, the way that I see it, the way that I predict things will work out is Path of Exile 1 ultimately won't have as many players as it did before. Ultimately, Path of Exile 2 will have a lot of players, and certainly more than Path of Exile 1 did. While I expect the future for Path of Exile 2 to be very good, even though, like Quinn kind of, mentioned on my first Path of Exile 2 video, I should be far more hyped for the game. I had reservations for, any game I hadn't played. And, more or less, I was right about that. There's always some reservations that you should have if you've never played a game before and it's in, closed beta state. Eventually, I do believe Path of Exile 2 will be, the best version of Path of Exile that you can play. It does appear like we are fairly distant from that point, and it does feel like the Path of Exile 1 cycle of things is broken on many fronts. But ultimately, the most important one is over at their company. At the end of the day, if they pulled a lot of resources from Path of Exile 1 and they're working on Path of Exile 2 right now, and Path of Exile 2 has more people playing it, and Path of Exile 2 has more people looking at their games in general, and Path of Exile 2 has bringing in more and more money, well, you kind of can pretty well predict how that's going to end. It probably is going to be an end cycle for the development of Path of Exile 1. Maybe not to the point where they're just cutting off, support for the game, but I think it is going to be the end of the era of consistently good 3 to 4 month leagues. That's kind of what I expect for Path of Exile 1. And yeah, it is certainly a sobering moment for players that have enjoyed the game for so long, like myself. But that's the way that these things roll out. Games are not static. The best games are not static. And, you really have to appreciate the good times that you have because they're not always going to be a lot of fun. And when they are, sometimes we're lucky enough to play a whole lot of it. So we'll see what the future brings, and I hope my insight has been valuable to you. See you next time.